Hello everyone. Welcome back to topic 4, Deep Learning for Computer Vision. In the previous session, we gave an overview and introduction on artificial neural network and the key concept of gradient descent. In this session, we will be focusing on convolutional neural network, which is a deep learning algorithm commonly applied to analyzing visual images. Till now, the neural network architecture that we have discussed remain appropriate when we are dealing with tabular data. By tabular, we mean that the data consists of rows corresponding to samples and columns corresponding to features. With tabular data, we might anticipate that the patterns we seek could involve interactions among the features. Sometimes, we truly lack knowledge to guide the construction of craftier architectures. In these cases, a multi-layer perceptron may be the best that we can do. However, for high-dimensional perceptual data, such structureless network can grow unwieldy. For example, if we want to build a neural network to classify cats and dogs, and we collect images with resolution of 1000 by 1000 pixels. This means that each input to the network has 1 million dimensions. According to our discussion of parameterization cost of fully connected layers, even an aggressive reduction to 1000 hidden dimensions would require a fully connected layer characterized by 1 billion parameters. Unless we have lots of GPUs, a talent for distributed optimization, and an extraordinary amount of patience, learning the parameters of this network may turn out to be infeasible. We may probably argue that 1 megapixel resolution might not be necessary. However, while we might be able to get away with 100,000 pixels, our hidden layer of size 1000 grossly underestimates the number of hidden units that it takes to learn a good representation of images. So, a practical system will still require billions of parameters. Moreover, learning a classifier by fitting so many parameters might require collecting an enormous dataset. And yet, both humans and computers are able to distinguish cats from dogs quite well, seemingly contradicting these intuitions. That is because images exhibit rich structure that can be exploited by human and deep learning models alike. Convolutional neural networks are one creative way that deep learning has embraced for exploiting some of the known structure in natural images. A convolutional neural network, short for CNN, is a deep learning algorithm which can take in an input image, assign learnable weights and biases to various objects in the image, and be able to differentiate one from the others. The preprocessing required in a convolutional neural network is much lower as compared to other classification algorithms. While in primitive methods, filters are hand engineered. With enough training, CNN have the ability to learn these filters and characteristics. The architecture of a convolutional neural network is analogous to that of the connectivity pattern of neurons in the human brain, and was inspired by the organization of the visual cortex. Individual neurons respond to stimulus only in a restricted region of the visual field, known as the receptive field. A collection of such fields overlap to cover the entire visual area. In case of extremely basic binary images, multi-layer perceptron might show an average precision score, while performing prediction of classes, but would have little to no accuracy when it comes to complex images, having pixels dependency throughout. A convolutional neural network is able to successfully capture the spatial and temporal dependencies in an image through the application of relevant filters. The architecture performs a better fitting to the image dataset due to the reduction in the number of parameters involved and reusabilities of weights. In other words, the convolutional neural network can be trained to understand the sophistication of the image better. A simple convolutional neural network architecture will have these components. Input layer will hold the raw pixel values of the image. In this case, an image of width 28, height 28, and channel of 1. Then we will have convolutional layer. It will compute the output of neurons that are connected to local regions of the input, each computing a dot product between their weights and a small region they are connected to in the input volume. This may result in volumes such as 24 by 24 by n if we decided to use n filters. And we have pooling layers. They will perform a downsampling operation along a spatial dimensions, resulting in a volume such 12 by 12 by n. Fully connected layers will compute the class scores, resulting in volume of size 1 times 10, where each of the 10 numbers correspond to a class score, such as among the 10 categories of handwritten digits. In this way, convolutional neural network transform the original image layer by layer from the original pixel values to the final class scores. Please note that some layers contain parameters and others don't. In particular, the convolutional and fully connected layers perform transformations that are a function of not only the activations in the input volume, but also of the parameters, such as the weights and biases. On the other hand, the residue and pooling layers will implement a fixed function. The parameters in the convolutional and fully connected layers will be trained using gradient descent, so that the class scores that a convolutional neural network computes are consistent with the labels in the training set for each image. In this figure, we have a red, green, blue image, which has been separated by its 3 color channels. There are a number of such color space in which images exist: grayscale, RGB, HSV, CMYK, etc. Image input data is expressed as a 3-dimensional matrix of width times height times channels. If we were using color images in our example, we would have 3 channels for the red, green, and blue pixel values, and that is 4 times 4 times 3. You can imagine how computationally intensive things will get once the images reach dimensions, say 8K. The role of the convolutional neural network is able to reduce the images into a form which is easier to process, without losing features which are critical for getting a good prediction. This is important when we are to design an architecture which is not only good at learning features, but also is scalable to massive datasets. The most important layer in convolutional neural network is the convolutional layer. This is the core building block of a convolutional network that does most of the computational heavy lifting. Let's first discuss what the convolutional layer computes without neuron analogies. The convolutional layer's parameters consist of a set of learnable filters. Every filter is small spatially, but extends through the full depth of the input volume. For example, a typical filter on the first layer of a convolutional neural network may have a size of 3 by 3. During the forward pass, we convolve each filter across the width and height of the input image and compute dot products between the entries of the filter and the input at any position. As we slide the filter over the width and height of the input image, we will produce a two-dimensional activation map that gives the responses of that filter at every spatial position. Intuitively, the network will learn filters that activate when they see some type of visual feature, such as an edge or some orientation, or a blotch of some color on the first layer, or eventually the entire honeycomb or wheel-like patterns on higher layers of the network. Now, we will have an entire set of filters in each convolutional layers, and each of them will produce a separate two-dimensional activation map. We will stack these activation maps along the depth dimension and produce the output volume. When dealing with high-dimensional inputs such as images, as we saw above, it is impractical to connect neurons to all neurons in the previous layer. Instead, we will connect each neuron to only a local region of the input layer. The spatial extent of this connectivity is a hyperparameter called the filter size. The extent of the connectivity along the depth axis is always equal to the depth of the input layers. It is important to emphasize against this asymmetry in how we treat the spatial dimensions and the depth dimensions. The constructions are local in two-dimensional space, but always full along the entire depth of the input volume. For example, suppose that the input volume has size 32 by 32 by 3. If the filter size is 5 by 5, then each neuron in the convolutional layer will have weights to a 5 times 5 times 3 region in the input layer, for a total of 75 weights plus 1 bias. Please note that the extent of the connectivity along the depth axis must be 3, since this is the depth of the input layer.